And we are back to talk about an old theory of yours about how Quentyn Martell may be alive. And you hit me up privately and you're like, there's a Quentyn is alive in the most recent episode, which is episode 7, and let's talk about it. I did not catch it. You'll have to...
Well, again, this very well may be that I'm just super self-absorbed, but, obviously, like, so many of my fans, like, finished the episode and were like, oh my God, Quentyn is alive, confirmed. I mean, that's a joke, but like, well, let me explain it from the beginning and like what Quentyn is alive is about really quick. And this is kind of similar to Lemongate, like seeing the Lemongate reference, all of a sudden I'm like, well, wait a minute. They might, these people, the writers know about the fan theories with the inclusion of the Lemongate 2 episodes ago. And so the thematically, the whole thing about Quentyn being still alive is that many people read A Dance with Dragons and they read the Quentyn chapters and they're like, oh, he's dead because we see him alive and he's on fire the last moment we see him in his chapter, and then then a body appears in the Barristan chapters. The prince is dying 3 days. He's 3 days dying. Mm-hmm. As this like corpse who's incredibly burned, and then the corpse dies.
Real quick, by the way, before we continue, for people who, I know there are a lot of non-book readers who listen, for those of you who don't know, in the books, Doran Martell has 3 kids, Trystane, Arianne, and this kid Quentyn. Doran sends Quentyn on a quest to Meereen to meet up with Dany, and she kind of brushes him off. So he hatches a plan to go down and steal one of her dragons, and things end very badly, and he supposedly dies being burned alive by dragonfire. Right.
Now, there's a fan theory that I certainly didn't invent, but I think because I've championed it and had a big video on it, people associate it with me, but I did not invent it. But the idea is that no, Quentyn didn't die. And the reasoning is, of course, the body is unrecognizable, and many other things that are kind of wrong about the chapter. I mean, you could go into the many things, but that's a whole nother discussion. I have a video on it. There's a lot of things, but on a larger level, I'm talking like there's a thematic element to Quentyn being alive, and that is in the Daenerys chapters at the start of A Dance with Dragons. A shepherd brings in some burnt bones and is sad and demands restitution. And this is in the show too. They put this scene in
season 4, yeah.
Where it's supposedly the body of his daughter, his 4-year-old daughter, who got killed by Drogon. Now, this death in the show simply haunts Daenerys, and that is that. In the book, yes, it haunts Daenerys, but she's also suspicious of it. And she says, burned bones prove nothing in her head. And she says that once in Daenerys 1, and then she thinks about it again as she's feeling guilty about Hosea, is the name of the little girl, Hosea dying. And, so she thinks about burnt bones prove nothing. I think one time she says burned and one time she says burnt, but, like with a T, but nonetheless, burned bones prove nothing, burnt bones prove nothing is how the story begins. Now, so and it is a reference also to the fact that at the same time, Jon is dealing with bringing in wildlings with Stannis, and there is a wildling submission ceremony. And during this wildling submission ceremony, Stannis chooses to burn Mance Rayder in a cage. Now, in the show, they simply just had Mance Rayder die. And he gets burned and shot with some arrows by Jon. But in the show, in the books, Mance Rayder is not dead because he was swapped out for a character called Rattleshirt, and Mance Rayder goes on to have some more adventures, and is quite involved with the at Winterfell with Theon and stealing Jane Poole, who is who they swapped in for Sansa in the show. So at the same time that Daenerys is thinking that burned bones prove nothing, Jon is dealing with the fact that burned bones prove nothing. And then at the end of A Dance with Dragons, we have these burned bones. And so the question is an unrecognizable corpse any evidence that someone died? No, so like the chapter of Barristan looking at this unrecognizable corpse means nothing. So, you have to look for other evidence of like, well, why else do we think, Quentyn dies? And when you actually like analyze it, there's a lot of problems. Now, maybe Quentin's alive, maybe Quentin's dead, but I think George R. Martin just wanted to leave it open. So he created a lot of problems. He created a lot of outs in case he didn't want to paint himself into a corner. So, but nonetheless, generally speaking, this is the thematic, element. Burned bones prove nothing. And so here in this latest episode of House of the Dragon, they kill a random guy who I feel bad for that random guy, and then pretend to kill Laenor, and then throw that guy's body in the fire. And so when they find the body, Corlys and Rhaenys think it's their son Laenor. Pretty horrible move, really. They murder a guy. They all conspire to murder a stranger. Laenor, Daemon, Rhaenyra, and then have Corlys, Rhaenys, Jace, and Luke go through massive trauma thinking that Laenor is dead. It's a pretty brutal, horrible thing to do. I think they're, on a different scale, they're trying to walk back Rhaenyra being evil. Like, oh, we don't want Rhaenyra so evil that she would kill Laenor, but she still kills a random guy and puts all these people through stuff. But
well, there's two ways of looking at it. Either Daemon told Carl to kill Laenor, but instead Carl just tells him about the plan, and they both choose to put on the act and flee. Or Daemon told Carl to tell Laenor the plan, and everyone is in on it. But the impression I got is that Daemon wanted Laenor to die, but instead, out of love and loyalty, Carl just told Laenor about this, and then Laenor was like, okay, let's go through with it so he can have the life he wants.
I mean, you're saying that Rhaenyra actually meant to kill Laenor?
Yes.
And that it's Carl Corey's, like,
it was his decision to, like, use this.
Well, Daemon is clearly in on it, because Daemon's the one that kills the random.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, it's possible that Daemon did it. I mean, because Daemon fought in the war with Laenor. He likes Laenor. So it's possible that Rhaenyra is super evil and wanted to kill Laenor, and then Daemon just, like, went and killed a random guy in his place. And conspired in order to save Laenor. It could have been that. We just don't have enough information. But nonetheless, Rhaenyra's a bad person either way.
Oh no, Rhaenyra's an asshole. Yeah,
yeah, she's a horrible person either way. I think but nonetheless, I think it's just very funny that they did the burned body swap out. Now, of course, these swap outs are pretty common in A Song of Ice and Fire. We have the Bran and Rickon, like, body swap.
Fake
Aegon. Fake Aegon, the story at the beginning. So it's not like there's not plenty of, like, body swaps that where people die and then something else happens, or bodies not found after suicides and murders, Shara Dane missing and things like this. But, he does, George R. Martin does a lot of classic, movie tropes. But I don't know. What do you think? Do you think it's a coincidence, or do you think that the writers are aware of the fan theories and, like, this is a nod to Quentyn is alive? So
you're basically saying that, I don't see the connection between Quentyn is alive and this whole... I really don't. I'm sorry, homie. I really don't. So you're basically saying that Laenor having a body double and switching up with burned bones...
A burnt, unrecognizable body double is the same situation with Hosea and with Quentyn. And Mance Rayder and Rattleshirt Mance Rayder and all that all happening, being a thematic element of A Dance with Dragons. The burnt bones prove nothing.
I think it's more or less that they are keeping in line with George's writing. We even got a Mayhaps this episode, I believe.
We did.
I think it's them keeping in line with George's writing, which he likes to swap people out all the time. So I think that's mostly what it is. The Lemongate, I understand. Lemongate, that you had some weight there. Here, I don't know. But
now Lemongate proves that they're paying attention to fan theories. Like if you assume that the writers know about fan theories, don't you think they would have also, if they knew about Lemongate, would they know about Quentyn is alive?
We did a recent podcast. I'm in the middle of putting that out right now, and I'm going to give you the long segment where we talk about the Ryan Condal, Elio, and Linda interview. What did Ryan Condal say about the writing process? Because I remember there was something in the interview about that.
Oh, really? He mentioned something about. Oh, he did say something about it being sort of organic so Elio and Linda asked him about some of the language and the writing process, things like mayhaps. They specifically asked about mayhaps and a few other things. And how the language is mimicking the books a bit. They asked if the writers were trying to mimic George's writing. And he said that he thought it was mostly him or the writers trying to mimic him. But he did say that he forced all of the writers to read all of A Song of Ice and Fire. So it could be any of that. It could be any of all the above. But he thought it was like him trying to include that, and then the other writers trying to please and mimic his writing and please him. Though, I don't know. If they were all forced to read A Song of Ice and Fire, you'd think that they would try to be throwing in some of that language.
I don't know. You see, so this is where I actually disagree that some of the writers might be Ice and Fire fans or they read the books. Because when you take Dave and Dan, we discussed this because for those of you who don't know, Preston and I on Patreon have a rewatch series for season 1 of Game of Thrones, and we got up to episode 3. You and I both agreed that Dave and Dan made changes from book to show that actually fit rather coherently and would make sense as a television adaptation. This is something I hear all the time from people behind the scenes whenever they adapt something, and they always say the same thing. Oh yeah, I've been a huge fan of this one thing for the longest time. I always harken back to Paul Giamatti as the Rhino from Amazing Spider-Man 2, and I remember him giving interviews where he's like, oh yeah, the Rhino has always been my favorite character. No, he hasn't.
You're like, really?
The Rhino, really?
The Rhino. Like, what like, in the whole pantheon of Spider-Man's, like, characters, the Rhino?
Yeah. No, but the reason I bring this up is because I think this is just Ryan Condal trying to reassure the audience that, yeah, don't worry, our writers, they've read the material. They got it going on. But I don't know.
Right. I suppose I am convinced that Ryan Condal's a big fan, though. I mean, so...
But I don't know if his team of writers, or, like, do they even have to be honest? Like, all they have to really do is write competent television. And that's it. Ryan Condal can kind of do the rest and fit all the Ice and Fire stuff in there. But I don't know about that. I don't think the writers are looking at it. So
you're saying that this is more of like, I was saying, is it honoring, I'm going to ask 2 separate questions, or maybe 3 questions. Like, okay, you don't think it's actually a nod to Quentyn is alive, but you think perhaps it's a nod to the many fake out deaths that are in A Song of Ice and Fire, or is it just a typical Hollywood thing, fake out deaths, and burning a body is just one of the easiest ways to make it unrecognizable? Yes. You think it's the latter. Like it's maybe not even referring to A Song of Ice and Fire. It's just, we need to do a fake out death, and a burning is just the way to do it, is the way to make a body unrecognizable.
Correct. Mm-hmm. Well, it could also be both them doing the usual Hollywood tropes and keeping in line with the stuff George has done in the books. So,
okay, all right.